Hear ye, hear ye! The Parliament of Geeks shall now come to order!
And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the Parliament of Geeks, the place where we ask and answer one simple question. Be it weeb or be it scrub? I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra. And with me I have 1, 2, 3, 4 good brothers. Ha 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 ha! We have the flamboyant flyer and our living Wikipedia, good brother Flutter. We have the man who will probably be laughing at the Cowboys with me in a couple weeks, good brother Matty. We have the man who's been laughing at the Broncos all year, good brother Slick Rick. And
Attention Flyers. Broncos are allowed in KC. Please throw your trash away in the proper bins.
That's a real thing, by the way.
And the man of 1,000 runes, the CEO of Zadare Enterprises, and the bane of my fucking existence, good brother Xanatrix.
Our mecha here at Zadare Enterprises cannot be bought with a metric ton of limestone. I am just saying that now.
No, but it can be
Ours
bought
are better.
It can be bought.
By the way, for the record, ladies and gentlemen, if someone else was introducing Mildred, he'd be like, instant Lions fan, add salty Aaron Rodgers tears.
And in the case of going full circle, I see that Aaron Rodgers is doing Brett Favre Simulator.
No, not even 2 metric tons of limestone, pork chop. It'll cost you cold, hard cash.
What about
hookers? Hookers? That's going to be a lot of hookers. And they're going to be really high class.
Wow.
And I'll still only get you 1. I'm willing to negotiate on hookers.
But I was so glad that our subject matter for today ended up on the list, ended up on the wheel, I should say, because well, I'm a petty motherfucker, and good brother Zan is a petty motherfucker.
Oh, am I? And
for quite some time, we have been throwing shade at YouTube Nobody and supposed Anituber Gigak over a comment that he made several years ago that has not aged well.
I mean, it's aged about as well as Fisk.
That comment being, Mecha is dead in the West. And truth be told, one of the early topics I had considered was exploring why there's this insistence on the idea of mecha being dead from a lot of so-called tastemakers. I did eventually explore it in an episode of The Adventures in the Monk and the Monarch, but I feel like a lot of it is there. For mecha is a very popular and very maligned genre. In the sense that a lot of people, I'm not sure when this started, but a lot of people got this idea that up until recently, quote unquote, mecha was a giant toy commercial.
When it hasn't been.
Well, let's be honest. There are some mecha series that have been giant toy commercials, except they were way better than they had any fucking right to be, and became their own thing at the same time. The Brave series is one of the best examples of this, but yeah, mecha is a thing that transcends many different things.
Of course, I think the reason...
Uh-oh.
Oh no!
We got a Robo-Monk.
We got interference again.
Damn you, internet!
Robo-Monk.
Hang on, how about now?
You're back.
Hey,
What I was going to get into, and BattleTech is a whole other kettle of fish.
And it isn't even it didn't even get, much anime.
Like the
But you
closest-
dare to refuse my patrol?
One of these days we are gonna have to do a cringe watch of the BattleTech cartoon. I've been
dear
holding it off
God.
for the longest time because I really don't want
Yeah, I can feel the shudders down my spine, Monk.
to. I'd like to say it's bad, but it was another one. It was another one of those adaptation cartoons on that USA Network block.
Yeah.
Like,
is that the same block that had tattooed teenage alien fighters from Beverly Hills? Because it feels like it was.
And the
Sounds like-
Dynaman parody dub.
The Dynaman one, I don't know about, but some of the other things that were on it were the Mortal Kombat cartoon,
Oh, Jesus!
Double Dragon,
Hey, that was an okay cartoon.
Okay. That was okay.
the Mega Man cartoon, which was
Ba-da-da-da,
actually
super fighting
Fighting
robot.
robot.
That one was actually good. Not to mention, it's the Scott McNeil cartoon all over again.
and
No, it literally is the Scott McNeil cartoon. He was talking to himself half the time.
yeah, and
Scott one of it.
GI Joe
Scott-
Extreme.
G.I. Joe.
Hey guys, do you hear that? I hear the sound of a plastic obsessed man child grabbing all the C4.
Oh yeah, I forgot the Street Fighter cartoon. Which, yes, it gave us some glorious memes, mostly thanks to M. Bison, but that's it.
Thank you, Richard Newman.
Yes! There we go.
Let's be honest.
The only
if
M.
you
Bison
can't-
meme that matters.
Let's be honest. M. Bison through multiple different adaptations has become a meme.
The Dictator
Very
has been
true.
a meme since 2 came out. What are you talking about?
Well, I would say, and well, for the longest time he was voiced by Norio Wakamoto, so memes are inevitable.
Exactly. I feel we've strayed from rails a
Yeah.
bit, though.
But the point that
Yeah.
I was getting at is that people seem to pretend that the years between Mazinger Z and Mobile Suit Gundam don't exist.
Which, bullshit, they don't.
And to anyone who wants to claim that old school mecha were toy commercials, clearly they have never read the manga of Getter Robo.
I'm sorry. That was just a little bit of getter psychosis there. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
Fair.
There's also the fact
Still
that
worrying though.
now there's a video that talks about the way mecha had changed throughout the 70s, but something that's important to note is that in a roundabout way, mecha ended up saving anime because
Yeah.
the Tokusatsu boom of the 1970s kicked anime's ass really badly.
Oh, it did.
Because you had a lot of issues when it came to the presence of animation and the rising popularity of both Kamen Rider, Super Sentai, and another reboot of Ultraman. Get used to that if you're an Ultraman historian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not looking forward to that eventual topic.
Yeah, we already covered Ultraman on Geek Watch a while ago. Although we covered it in a broad sense.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. We haven't given it the proper in-depth one.
We may not give an in-depth one. There's no real angle there.
Yeah,
That's up for discussion, but rails.
but and it's through this mindset of toy commercial, which is where you get that one infamous meme that I think we've all seen in one form or another. Unlike most mega shows, this one is about the characters.
I
Oh,
hate
that.
that statement. I hate that statement.
Join the club.
No. Every good mecha show is about the characters, you fucks. Every good one. Every mecha show is usually about the characters. If there is no character, then the mecha show isn't even really a show. At that point, it truly does become a commercial. But I haven't run into a mecha show that doesn't have at least some character. Even if it's a mecha show that tricked me into thinking it was going to be good because of its music, like All Noah Zero, the characters still had good character. The story was just kind of shitty.
And
Can I put the shield down now?
the problem with that line of thinking is that it's built on a false premise. That's the reason why I brought up the whole toy commercial thing and the relationship with that mecha had with anime as a whole in the 70s.
We're not even at the skull button yet, for God's sakes.
But I need to set the stage when it comes to the disrespect that mecha gets. Now, that of course brings us to YouTube Originals' foray into CG anime with Obsolete.
But before we get there, Monk,
Yep. It is now time to rise for our drinking anthem.
Skull!
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to sound the yellow horn!
That never gets old.
No.
It broke a couple people's mics, though.
Yeah, my microphone's not so good at catching my peaking, I know.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't talking just at you, though.
Yep. So, Obsolete. Now, a lot of you know that I have my issues with CG anime. I've, over the years, lightened that issue and treated it on a case-by-case basis because people are starting to get better at it. For a while, I had my issues with it because it would always take me out of things.
In the last two seasons alone, with some of the anime I've been watching, it's very clear they're using 3D and CG to actually make characters, but it's done really well. And a good example from this new season, the Nier Automata anime.
I know that some people are going to hate it, and I feel it's going to be divisive, but also Trigun Stampede.
God, yes, it is so fucking good. Oh my god. I watched episode 1 already.
Yeah, so did I. The reason why I say it's going to be divisive is there's going to be some people who are hung up on it not being like the original, and there are those who are going to take a chance on it. I've been down this road before. But now I should note that Obsolete was meant to be kind of the Japanese foray for YouTube Originals, even though it initially shows up on Bandai Namco Arts channels for paying users and then later for free. But you look at the PV posters they put up, and it has YouTube Originals slapped on it. Because that was around the time where there were a handful of similar shows that YouTube was pushing. One of these, I'd say probably the most successful one of these, was Cobra Kai. Unfortunately, all of these did not go multiple seasons because YouTube realized that they would actually have to spend money to make these kind of shows a success.
The only one that did get multiple seasons was Cobra Kai.
And I'd say a lot of that was due to a fan outpouring.
Of course.
Yeah.
But the other entries were not so fortunate. And I'd say much like how Devilman Crybaby was used as kind of the entry point for Netflix to jump into Japan, I feel like Obsolete was a similar attempt in regards to anime. And in all fairness, they certainly were not hurting when it came to staff, because the head honcho for the whole thing is the butcher himself, Gen Urobuchi.
Yep.
The Uro Butcher. It's nice to see him again.
The animation was handled by Bluemont Studio, who have only one other animation credit to their name according to my anime list. Let me see if I have better luck on ANN. So let's see. So they have been involved in things like background art and CGI for a handful of different shows. Apparently they were involved. Apparently one of the bigger ones was Agu Tensai Ningyo, which I haven't seen. But they've either been involved with direct CGI, CG production, or CG assistance in some form or another. Though they do have some big names to their credit in this regard. The Akito the Exiled OVA for Code Geass. Apparently they were involved in production cooperation with the Dragon Ball Super Hero. They did the CGI modeling for Thrice Upon a Time.
Ooh.
Yeah, which is a very good movie, so they know what they're doing with CGI.
CG production for Grand Blue Fantasy, the animation, which I haven't seen.
I need to see that sometime.
But the only, and as far as the staff, the director was, even though Gen Urobuchi is listed as draft plan and series organization, the director. Well, we have two names for director. The first is Hiroki Yamada, which is a difficult one to look up, because the first thing that comes up is a Japanese footballer.
Well, according to ANN, he's a 3D CGI animator. Did modeling for Aquarian Evil. Did modeling in cooperation for the Bayonetta Bloody Fate movie. Not only the Akito the Exiled OVA for Code Geass, but also Cross Ange, Rondo of Angel and Dragon.
Which I've heard people say is absolute shit, but I can't vouch for that.
Neither can I.
It's bad, Monk. It's bad. There's some really good units in Super Robot Wars, but the story is so bad. He also did digital animation for Howl's Moving Castle.
Mm-hmm.
And Spirited Away, and Strike the Blood, 3D CG.
The other director we have is Seiichi Shirato, which I get the feeling that name's going to be easier to look up.
Let's see. He is primarily, it looks like he's researcher.
I see a lot of setting assistant, setting cooperation, and chief researcher. So I'd say he's the quintessential second unit director.
He did the TV version of The Fruit of Grisaya. Oh my god!
Wow.
I haven't seen that.
Play the VN. It's better. It's also much more violent.
Mm.
He also did the OVA for Gargantia on the Virtuous Planet. He's done a lot of setting stuff for Lupin the Third and for
Hello.
Legend of the Galactic Heroes, Jormungand, Gundam Age. And wow, he did setting research even for the most recent seasons, the Witch of Mercury. Look at that.
Nice.
Oh, good on him. But I think you see why I say he's the quintessential second unit director.
Yes. Absolutely.
Now, with that in mind, let's get the elephant out of the room first when it comes to talking about the CG. I realize that one of the more prominent instances of CG anime that involved mecha was X-Arm, and X-Arm was nightmarish.
Yes.
But for a studio that this was their breakout, they do pretty well when it comes to the visuals. I don't have as many issues of Uncanny Valley or the like, except for some shots. When broad movement is used with the human characters, it doesn't look too bad. When it has to be more refined movement, it can use a bit of work.
Small amount. It's again as a breakout series. I think this was the first time they'd done anything that was just full on 3D CG.
Yeah,
because everything else we've seen in the credits has indicated just helping here and there,
or doing CG for those eye catch moments.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing that makes Obsolete a bit tricky is it is not necessarily a linear story.
That it very much isn't.
In fact, the story jumps around between locations and times.
Yep, the Obsolete anime has a lot of I guess setup and payoff is the best way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes the payoff is indirect, and this kind of thing I will get into when we get into our final judgments. I will note that there isn't much in the way of music, but at the very least it doesn't become an issue. And well, this is a pretty breezy anime to get through. We got through this in 2 weeks.
Yep. The episodes are an average of 12 to 13 minutes long, and that's counting intro and outro, which we didn't really watch the outro after the first time. The intro is so short, or at least up until the last time. Shut up.
We'll get to that.
That the intro is maybe 30 seconds total, and it's an excerpt from a song that was co-written by Skrillex and let's see, what's the other person?
All right, I'm back.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. Let me see here. Skrillex and Nightwatch.
Welcome back.
And it's a good song. I'm not gonna lie. It's definitely sets this feeling of an unknown but nearby future.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, with that in mind, I actually, you know what? I'm gonna save that till the end because we'll have some things to say on that. But they did pull the stunt of staggering the episodes and trying to act like it's 2 seasons. No, it's 1 season.
Yep, it's 12 episodes.
It's 12 episodes, 6 and 6. But credit to it is they are short. Like they're 12 to 15 minutes each, depending, and very digestible.
Yeah,
Mhm.
if we hadn't been careful the first time we were doing the watchcast, we probably would have just finished this in one day.
We were watching this over the holiday. And we were all, but most of us didn't have to work the next day. We could have easily done all 12 in one go.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
The other thing I know is about with it, it's like, no, that'll go more into story. I'll hold off on that, but yeah.
Yeah. So we open up in 2023 in somewhere in South America. So we could say that we're in Valverde. That one was for you, Maddie.
Little bit.
Specifically, we're looking upon a conflict between Ecuador and Peru.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And it's what we end up having is essentially a protracted black operations action held by a detachment of U.S. Marines.
Yep.
A set of Marines who are led by a man named Bowman. And this is also where we get our first look at the mecha known as exoframes. Now,
Spoiler alert, they become a big deal in this show.
I should note that the exoframes are technically mecha, but they lean more towards power armor in terms of their overall size.
They're about
Yeah.
3 meters tall total, I would say, when fully extended. They work through a neural interface. The person who is piloting simply has to grab a handle and sit in what is called the saddle, and it interfaces with their neurology and acts as an extension of their body almost.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But there is a bit of backstory in the fact that there's been a growing amount of global uncertainty, and this conflict between Ecuador and Peru is just a case of how can we make things worse.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This
That
is
it
shit.
is.
How can we make it shittier?
Mm-hmm. And the reason why I say this is a black operations thing is because when it comes to the Ecuador and Peru thing, officially the U.S. is not involved.
Officially, the U.S. doesn't even use exoframes for military work.
Yes, there is a treaty that's heavily mentioned that it's never gone into full detail what that agreement is, but the implication is that exoframes will not be used for military service.
Long story short, there's one side that says, no, we're going to keep our limestone. This is some scary shit. And as we see in this show, the other side just doesn't care, has a shitload of limestone, just wants to win this motherfucker and go home.
Mm-hmm. And when first off, the operation that's done, I do have to appreciate how they set the thing up with what you could expect as reasonable tactics when you're throwing a monkey wrench that is mecha involved in it.
In fact, from what we see, the enemy emplacement they're trying to hit is a bunch of mecha using mecha-sized mortars. And they're coming in to stop these mortars from going off. Other than size, which is frankly pretty big when you think about it, compared to normal humans, this is almost just squad versus squad fighting that we see in modern warfare.
Granted, the microwave setup is going to be a bit unusual.
The microwave gun was great.
Yeah, but it's a smart setup. You use that to make the mortars detonate early.
Yep.
And it does seem to go fairly well for this group of Marines, until a third party shows up to make things worse.
They don't know who they are. All they know is that they have skulls on their unit sigil.
A skull
Yeah.
with 2 scars on it.
Yep. I believe they're unofficially called the Outcast Brigade.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And then for the next one, we go back all the way to 2015 in Cabinda.
And essentially, the episode begins with a broadcast from an alien, an extraterrestrial, essentially saying, "We're not here for war. We got some stuff. We're just looking for some limestone."
They say we do not have any interest in conflict or politics. They don't want to get involved in the world other than you give us stuff, we'll give you stuff.
A fair trade.
Yep. 1
Then
ton of
this-
limestone gets you a mech.
1 metric ton specifically, 1,000 kilograms. And the big thing here is that because of their activities, humans begin calling them peddlers because they peddle.
Mm-hmm. But even in 2015, there's still a bit of debate about whether or not they should be used, and this was what led a lot of the more advanced nations to ratify that agreement that I mentioned, called the Sankt Gallen Arrangement.
The Sankt Gallen Arrangement was specifically an arrangement agreed upon by some larger players in the world, the US, the EU, Japan, China, etc., primarily to protect the automotive industry. Regulate the import and use of exoframes.
In that regard, could you say it's analogous to the Railways Act that the UK had pulled in like 1930?
I think so.
Close enough.
Short version for those who aren't history buffs when it comes to the Railways Act, the UK was very concerned that the transportation sector would be taken over by American trucks. So they mandated that any cargo above a certain weight had to be transported by train.
Yep. Now, the key thing here to mention, and it'll be more important as we go along, is that there are multiple countries that refused to sign the Sankt Gallen Arrangement, because by the Sankt Gallen Arrangement, not only restricted the import and use of exoframes, it was also the act that specifically forbade them from military use. And so a lot of countries in the African Union and some countries in parts of Asia decided not to sign.
Which, to an extent, is understandable.
And because of it's not hard to get 1 metric ton of limestone. So because of that, exoframes were seen as a very versatile and very cheap asset.
Yes.
Now, in 2015, this is where we get introduced to Bowman. At the time, he was part of the LAR battalion in the Republic of Angola.
He was a tank commander.
Mm-hmm. And I think at that time he was not a commanding officer, but he was a lieutenant at the time. And one of the more notable scenes during this is him discussing the effects of exoframes and how this might change the state of things.
Of course, his exo in the tank with him is let's just say skeptical.
Skeptical and the kind of person who is probably a half step away from getting court-martialed.
Always riding that line.
Oh yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm not saying he'd get court-martialed for something illegal, but just conduct unbecoming. I'll put it that way.
Which is a pretty broad but very definite article within the officers' corps and the corps in general. We're basically watching them watch over a corps of military engineers building a bridge to transport armor across a large river. And then we see something in the water. Bowman kind of notices it, but kind of is like, doesn't see it again. But the rest of us, those of us who are all genre savvy as hell, are like, oh no. They were just talking about how it would be so easy to weaponize exoframes.
Yeah.
And get the popcorn.
Yep. These
Popcorn and all the obituaries.
enemy exoframes pop up on the actual bridge. They have explosives strapped to them, and they were using snorkels and what looked to me like those plastic ice coolers you store your drinks in when you go to the beach to use as ballast while they were swimming.
Wow.
That's what it looked like. On their legs, they looked like those ice coolers that they just kept pumped full of air as ballast. And they come up onto the bridge. They break it apart to try and dump the armor into the river. And then they chase any of the armor platoon that remains that's running away. Because they literally have anti-armor mines strapped to the exoframes. You can see them on the elbows and shit.
What's funny to me about this whole scene is we have heard in one form or another how tanks will always be better than mechs, which in circumstances where you're dealing with current day technology is certainly true. The mechs would be far too expensive to be worth their while. But here's the counter argument when you have a technology that is barely understood and has one distinct advantage against a tank: speed.
2, Monk. Speed and flexibility, because remember what I said earlier about how the interface works? It acts like an extension of a user's body. So if someone's trained with one enough, they can have it do running, jumping, parkour, everything. So these guys are basically running at high speeds, higher speeds than tanks and APCs can go with their wheels and treads. And then just kind of jumping on tanks and either killing the people inside or blowing up the tanks.
Yep.
And even Bowman tries to get out of this with his XO, though he does it using an amphibious vehicle that they then capsize. But don't explode. I think the thing that offended me most about this entire scene was that none of the fucking Bradleys and none of the fucking tanks were using goddamn BMG! Except for one!
Rat mode engaged.
Those were Abrams! They're all supposed to have goddamn Maudusins!
Monk, if he goes on
All of
another
them!
I'm hitting the R. Kelly button.
But
I have popcorn. I'm fine with this.
even though this was a small engagement in the middle of nowhere, this one engagement that would go that went tits up would have massive consequences on the world stage, because this was where it was demonstrated the mere potential of exoframes in a combat engagement.
Additionally, this group was not associated with any standing military of any type, with any official military. The people on these exoframes were dressed like normal civilians. It was almost like a guerrilla army or a terrorist group.
Yep.
But of course, we see the skull with the slashes again at some point. So
Yes. Then we end up jumping all the way over to the Siachen Glacier in the year 2016. And an interesting thing that we see is that people are starting to I guess modularize the exoframe platform.
Hmm. They're equipping them with modular armor and equipment.
Yeah. And at this point, we shift the perspective over to well, the name of the episode, Miyajima Rei.
I would like to point out for anyone who doesn't know where the Siachen Glacier is, it is a glacier in the Himalayan mountain range that is on the line of control between India and Pakistan.
Yep. And Ray is brought in as part of a officer exchange program to a base with the Indian Army Special Mountain Warfare Brigade, the Ladakh Scouts as they're known.
Mm-hmm.
And they need exoframes because you're dealing with a spot that's 6,000 meters above sea level.
Yep.
You want to conserve as much energy on the human as possible.
Because, as anyone who's seen horror stories about mountain climbers, especially ones who try and climb K2 or Everest, you get up there and you get less oxygen to work with. Things can go south easily.
Yeah, there's a reason why these expeditions take literal months. Your body needs to adjust to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Now, it's important to note here that India was originally one of the countries that did sign the St. Gallen Arrangement. But by the time Miyajima Rei does show up there, they've withdrawn from the St. Gallen Arrangement and become the first army to officially utilize exoframes in their whole army. Not just this Mountain Warfare Brigade set, but everybody.
Which would be a reason why the JSDF would want to send somebody in to kind of do some cross training.
Mm-hmm.
Especially since you're dealing with people who are going to be far more adaptive to the extreme weather, to the point where we start seeing mechs on skis and using the kind of equipment that you would use when you're hiking.
Yep.
Yep.
But here we see in the previous episode we saw exoframe on tanks. This time we're seeing exoframe on exoframe combat on the glacier.
Yep, because they see a set of other exoframes that aren't theirs, so they assume them to be Pakistani.
Mm-hmm.
Since the only people who would be on the border other than the Indians are the Pakistanis, and they're on the Indian side of the treaty line. So then we get to see giant mecha use skis. Bet you didn't see that one coming, guys.
Although anyone from Finland would probably, who's surprised at the idea of skis in combat, is just laughing because, well, that's standard fare for war fighting in Finland.
Yeah, all the trees are laughing too, Monk.
Mm-hmm. Just remember, I need you to find how many Finnish snipers are in this picture.
And the picture is full of white trees on a mountainside. The answer is yes, people.
Yeah, the answer is yes. Also, fucking hide. Get out of the crossfire.
But next we end up going with the story of Loner, and this brings us to the Persian Gulf in the year 2017.
Yep. And so some background just before we get into the actual episode. Countries that were using exoframes and didn't sign St. Gallen, such as the African Union, are starting to see an economic boom. But countries that signed St. Gallen and thus have restricted exoframe usage are seeing an economic recession because they've lost automotive and heavy machine exports. And this is also something that is fueling some of the issues in South America that we saw earlier in 2023 or later in 2023. Like we said, it gets confusing.
Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, and with any market, if there's a gap, it's going to be filled. And when it comes to
Great,
countries that are abiding by the Sankt Gallen arrangement, that void was filled by PMCs.
We all love that word around here. I'm sure most of anybody watching this has played, I don't know, any number of Kojima games or any number of military games where private military companies are a thing. So they're a pretty common nomenclature in anime and video game universes, essentially.
Mm-hmm. But Loner is a relatively new recruit to one such PMC known as Cerberus Security Services.
Yep.
Their contract in this case is protecting essentially an oil field.
Oil field and refinery, I think it was.
But then things ended up going south. And I should note before that he had a casual conversation on the effect of exoframes with one of the workers there, and his CO had warned him to not get too familiar.
On top of that, the subject of the discussion was actually very important. Not only was it showing that because this place was in the Middle East, one of the places that hadn't signed Sankt Gallen, exoframes were in all parts of their industry. This worker was in another exoframe.
Mm-hmm.
And she asks him, what do you think about the markings that we see on these exoframes when we receive them? He's like, I don't know, maybe some sort of pattern, maybe some sort of a tactile patterning on their surface. And she's like, no, it looks like damage patterns, stress and wear. And she theorizes that all of the exoframes being sent to Earth are cast-offs, things that no longer have an operational value life within the peddler's culture or within the wider universe. They're basically getting junk for limestone. But you know what they say, one man's trash is another man's treasure.
Mm-hmm.
How many times have we seen that in anime and video games?
If the shit still works.
But later on, the refinery is attacked by terrorists, and this is where that warning really comes full circle, because Loner is of the mindset of protecting the refinery, in part because it's his job, and in part because, well, protecting people is part of his creed from day one. He's
Ex-Marine.
Mm-hmm. But midway through the fight, because their employer has decided to terminate the contract, they're like, nope, we're pulling out.
It wasn't that their employer decided to terminate the contract. It was that their employer refused to pay.
Mm-hmm.
The check bounced.
Yeah. Just like when all y'all out there try to make Monk and I act nice, and we keep telling you that check hasn't cashed and it's not big enough, even if it did. This PMC was like, oh shit, we're not getting paid? Get out, guys. Let the terrorists win.
He's not kidding.
They got some good footage beforehand, too. They even lost a guy who was too big for his own britches, I guess.
He was trying to pull an Antonio Brown.
and so they get some good footage. They get the hell out. They're at a loss because they lost a man, they lost an exoframe, and they lost munitions. Fuck, that all costs money. But they did get some good PR footage for recruitment.
And in a bit of I guess black humor, some of the footage of what we saw regarding the whole thing going south was used in the complete opposite light in the recruitment ad.
Yeah, there was an online recruitment ad that played some of the better action portions of the fight to show, hey, this is what you can do if you join Cerberus.
Or if
Yeah.
if you pay for Cerberus's services.
That too. You can have this and more.
Mm-hmm.
It was definitely some bleak outlook.
No, the best part, one of the things I think, at least personally, I found amusing was how the episode ended, where it literally was the end of video thing of the advertisement. So if you weren't careful, you could be staring at that. It's like, okay, what's next? Unaware the video actually ended.
And this episode really starts to show kind of what Obsolete is about. The effect of a sudden, unknown, extremely advanced technology thrown on humanity, and how it ripples through society at large.
Literal and in literal years.
Yeah.
I
Span of a decade.
I brought it up when we were watching, but what immediately came to mind for me is the dreadnought effect in Warfare.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Which there's a few factors that go into it, but basically when a technology is introduced that changes the face of things.
And not just Warfare, because the dreadnought effect can echo in a full society.
Mm-hmm.
Which we see near the end.
We'll get there.
Then we jump over to somewhere in the sub-Saharan region in 2016.
Yep. So now we're going back in time. And we see a bunch of kids on very lightly refit exoframes. And by very lightly, I mean that the exoframes have had the wheel drive systems that we've seen added to them, and these little metal frames with canopies that are
That's literally like
They basically turned them into campers.
Like literally the only thing they had on them was the ability to move and the canopies. Everything else, like you are seeing on the screen right now of the frames, if it didn't allow it to run, it was not needed.
Yeah.
Nope.
And so these little frames with canopies were basically used as a way to try and break up the silhouette, because that's why it was a camouflage canopy. And they held what is very funny to look at. They looked like rebar with plastic barrels on the end, except these are contact explosives.
Mm-hmm. And they were basically told to use this to kill tanks.
And I do need to reiterate, these are children.
Yeah.
These are child soldiers.
That they are.
Do I have to say the Jim Carrey line?
Dude, it is the Monastery.
That's true.
But the entire point of this particular episode is to show how the children are being used as expendable, trying to get a tank. And of course, me going, those guys aren't the US, even though that's an Abrams, because everybody's holding an AK.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Stolen Abrams, AKs. Maybe those Abrams might have been purchased legitimately. You never know.
Yeah.
But we get down to just a couple kids who seem to know each other as friends, trying to flee from this scene because it's just not, everything's gone tits up. Almost everybody's dead. One of the other child soldiers tries to say, "You're a bunch of cowards and traitors. Come back, blah blah blah," and he gets blown up. But then we see this guy standing in front of a well-equipped exoframe that has a sniper rifle. He's got a very chiseled face. And while the kids are running, one of the tanks that is about to blow their heads off is blown up. And it goes back to that guy, and he turns his head, and we see a couple of scars on his face. And then something really interesting happens. It's the one thing that I thought was probably the most interesting thing about this character, and we never see it explored again. He makes a motion with his arms that the exoframe behind him, he's not in it, it's behind him, mimics with the rifle, and then pulls one of his fingers like he's pulling a trigger. And the finger on the exoframe is pulled, and the rifle fires and shoots another tank. So somehow this guy can control his exoframe outside of it.
Mm-hmm.
Which that would have been an interesting concept to see explored further.
Yes.
But no.
I wish it was. But that allows the kids to escape back to their unit, where they are being
chastised.
Frankly, abused.
Yep.
The commander's like, you couldn't even do something like take down tanks. You're supposed to do what I tell you. You're useless to me if you can't do what I tell you. And then the same guy we saw shows up in the camp and goes,
yeah,
fuck you, you're dead.
So, no, he goes, so here's the thing. I'm taking command. The main headquarters has already said so, and you're being detained on suspicion of abusing your soldiers. It's like, but we treat all the child soldiers this way. Oh, you confess. Takes out a gun, shoots him in the head.
Like I said,
this man's name is Major Zahir.
Mm-hmm.
And he has an exoframe marked with a skull with 2 scars, much like his own face. And one of the children even asks him what that is, and he says it's a lucky charm. That's kept him alive this entire time.
But he ends up giving them a speech about how they were expendable, but he will they were expendable, but he will make them into soldiers.
Yep. That they were just children, that they were expendable and weak, but that he would make them strong into soldiers so that he would never be expendable again.
Mm-hmm.
And so
the case in point is with the next episode, which is still in the sub-Saharan area, but we jump forward a few years to 2021.
I don't actually think we jump forward to 2021 until the second half of that episode, though, Monk, because this is showing them still as children in those simple exoframes, where they've learned to parkour across the buildings and take out tanks and helicopters. It's actually a really cool action sequence.
Vega is saying he taught them how to pilot the mechs. Not exactly the case. It's stupid easy to pilot one of these things. It's more that he taught them how to actually fight.
Yeah, it's basically like before they were just like recruits he picked off the street and said, "Here, hey you, I'm going to have you work. Take this and run." That was what they were before. Now it's like they actually have been taught tactics, timing, all that such.
Mm-hmm. Not only that, he encouraged them to really work not only their work in the exoframe, but themselves, because the exoframe is an extension of themselves. They're bonded to it neurologically, so they can do things that are just like what the human body can do, as so long as they think about it and execute it neurologically. And so they go, like I said, they go through this large parkour sequence with these with these exoframes, jumping across buildings and stuff, taking out tanks and helicopters, and I think that that's still technically back in 2016, because at a point, after they're done with their operations, Zahir says, "Hey, I've been told that everything's done here, and and you no longer need to be soldiers. You can be normal kids again."
Which is not taken well by the kids.
They're like, "But you just taught us to fight. You taught us to be soldiers." He's like, "Well, there's another option then. You can come with me." And I think that's when we get the skip forward.
Yeah, where we end up seeing a grown-up Jamal who did take that choice and is giving a similar speech to someone else, and he, much like those kids, have that same skull icon on their outfit.
On their
Basically,
outfit, on their exoframes, everything.
yeah. Basically, it goes full circle within that little episode.
Yep.
He even saves some kids who are being threatened by a petty officer in this war, who says, "Hey, you're being arrested on suspicion of abusing your subordinates." And the guy charges him, so he shoots him in the face, just like Zahir did back when Jamal was a kid. And he says, "I will teach you to survive. I will teach you to be soldiers." And so the life of that goes on.
The circle continues.
Yep. Then we end up shifting into the year 2021 in Azania.
Yep. And so, just a something that is sort of explored in this episode, that is actually good background, is the fact that the Technological Independent Economic Cooperative Conference for Young Nations is being held in this country. And the countries that were opposed to St. Gallen, such as China, Egypt, India, Azania, parts of the Middle East, etc., are all gathered there.
Oh, Zan, did we lose you?
No, I finished my point.
All right.
I said they're all gathered there.
But of course, one of the bigger things that's shown during this is a full-on military parade for Ralia Reshep, the president of the Republic of Azania, and this military parade is full of exoframes.
Some of them are even dressed like Zulu warriors. But the entire I guess the what's the word I'm looking for here? Like, the intimations that we get from this particular parade and the media circus, as we like to call it, around it, is that Reshep is not only a strong leader, he's one that's probably taken his position as coup d'etat back when Azania was ruled by and run by its military leaders, and then later turned into a republic. But the jingoism has not died. It is very clear that there's a new jingoism, especially with Reshep.
In the form of a technocracy.
Almost.
He certainly advocates for a technocracy, even if in his case it's in the name of trying to make it so that African nations are less dependent on more developed nations in the north
and the world. It had a really familiar byline of what we've heard from some of the socialist actors on Twitter, which stuck in my craw.
Especially the whole thing of wealth distribution for Africans, because that never backfires ever. No, there weren't long ass lines to get a loaf of bread.
No, not at all. Never. No such thing happened, Monk. I don't know what you're talking about.
But then we move to Area 51, which does not have the aliens, despite what people would think.
Area 51 doesn't exist. What are you talking about?
But this
and cut to Independence Day, sir. That's not entirely accurate.
But
Or as I like to say, cut to Bugs Bunny with the screwball thing in Area 52.
But the year for this is 2022. And Area 51 is one place of many that have been trying to decipher the technology of the exo frame, including
And the
including a project called Xenogauge.
Ah,
and there's a the only thing they've been able to decipher so far, the fluid inside the exoframe is safe for consumption, which a scientist literally just drinks a bottle of it as.
She literally chugs bottles of that shit.
Mm-hmm.
But the other things they've discovered through testing that while don't actually have anything to do with understanding the technology are exoframes can run so long as 30% or more of the fluid is within the exoframe body, and B, exoframes are modular. You can rip off the arm of another exoframe and attach it to your own.
yep.
But as far as what makes them tick, what the material of the fluid or anything like that, the answer that they have is we have no fucking idea.
Yeah, it's a big
Yeah, pretty much.
It's not a case of I don't know. It's more of a case of whatever it is completely beyond our understanding of technology.
Yeah.
And in the process of this, we do see the kind of the prototypical build that we'd eventually see in episode 1.
Yep. We even see the 4 Marines. There is a 4th Marine introduced here.
Mm-hmm.
But we see 4 Marines, 3 of them being ones we've already seen: Bowman, Ray, and Lowener. Having with their newbie Fernando, having a sparring match inside exoframes. Which, if you'll remember, everybody, the U.S. does not do this. They do not have any exoframes in the military. No such things exist. You are crazy.
But it's in this episode that we see a growing tension because in Bowman's mind, his superiors aren't taking the threat of Reship's ideology seriously.
Very true.
And obvious, and I'm pretty sure it's deja vu for him because his superior officer didn't think that weaponized exoframes were going to be a problem until it was.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And meanwhile you have a lot of people in developed nations who don't see this growing technocratic ideology that's developing in Africa as a problem.
Technocracies are scary, people.
Mm-hmm. And it's shortly, but after that we end up jumping to 2023, and right on the Peru-Ecuador border.
So this is just before we saw the Marine boys, we think.
And the international relationships have gone south because of the economic impact of exoframes.
Yeah. Shit has gone way downhill.
South. It's gone more southern than the South.
Mm-hmm.
It's more southern than Leonard Skinner, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But, and of course, one of them is the one we already had mentioned, which was the Ecuador-Peru conflicts. But it's made clear that this is just one instance of civil war breaking out all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And
this episode was actually really good. Like, really good. And you can really tell it was one that was written by Udabuchi.
because
It's a game of cat and mouse between this jungle force from Peru, while they're under fire from a mysterious exoframe force they're trying to catch these guys who have been mortaring their FOB, their forward operating base or forward operation base.
Mm-hmm.
And they just can't seem to catch up to them. And then eventually, they get sort of pinned in what seems to be a perfect snipey hole and start getting taken out one by one.
In that regard, calling it cat and mouse, I'm not sure if that's the best analogy. I think a better analogy would be 10 Little Indians.
That might be a better one, true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only clue that they have is a decrypted call sign of
Carwincho.
Yeah. Thank you for bailing me out, because otherwise I was gonna butcher my
Peruvian.
Yeah.
Your Andean, whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the Carwincho is the name of an ancient Andean volcano god.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the guys on the team starts freaking out. He's like, I know what Carwincho is, man. We're all gonna die.
Game over, man. Game over.
Yes,
Pretty
much.
actually that.
It almost literally as soon as he started like full on freak out, boom.
People started dying, though it wasn't him. He was the second to last to die.
Bada bum bum bum. Another one bites the dust. Bada bum
But
bum bum.
now you may be wondering, well, what do you mean sniped? How do you snipe an exoframe? Easy, you kill the pilot.
Yeah.
These are very clearly heavy anti-armor shells that go just straight through the cockpit, and the guys fall down flat. It's like, oh, that's not exoframe disabled. That's pilot down.
Yep. KIA.
Like it got to a point we see, I think it was our little freak out boy scrambling trying to get out of his suit, his mech, and as soon as he got out,
Little panic boy was like, I gotta get out. Carwincho's gonna kill me. And as soon as he opens his hatch and starts climbing out, he gets sniped.
I think he was just about out. He was just about out.
Yep, and it fucked him.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is not something you would normally shoot at a person. It's an anti-material round for sure. But the Geneva Convention doesn't seem to matter when exoframes are involved.
Hold on, guys. I'm being called elsewhere. I'll hopefully be back.
Don't worry about it, man.
But eventually it's revealed that the person who's been doing the sniping, who they kept referring to as Carwincho, is actually Zahir.
Yep. It's his same unit with his same skull with 2 slashes. And he even played with them because they saw some exoframe fluid on the ground. They're like, oh, he's been damaged by us shooting in blindly into the fucking jungle. Of course he has. And they follow it. And the one remaining guy finally follows it to the top of an old decrepit pyramid temple type thing. And it's a beer bottle full of the exoframe fluid. It was used to lure him up there, and that's when he got sniped.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, literally cut to Carlin. It's called fucking with people.
Exactly.
The sweet irony is him getting killed on the steps of a temple.
Dalia Cueto will be proud.
It was a sacrifice
I'm
to
sorry. El
Carwincho.
Jefe from MLW. Same diff.
God damn it, man.
It was a sacrifice to Carwincho, monk.
Sacrifice to the gods.
Kalima had to be done.
I do like dramatic irony, but then we end up shifting 2 years and into Sonora, Arizona,
Which is the Mexican part of the Arizona-Mexico border.
Mm-hmm.
The name of the episode is Santa Muerte, which, as all of you may know, means Saint Death. It's short for Our Lady, Our Lady Saint of Death.
Mm-hmm.
And what it turns out to be is a long line of those same kind of exoframes that we saw the child soldiers using, covered in more what looks like coolers, and only one exoframe with a gun behind them. And I'm like, wait a minute. And for some reason, nobody could hear me while I was going, "These are drug mules!" for like the first 2 minutes.
Yeah, you muted your mic.
I didn't mute my mic. I had to unmute it. It was muted automatically somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, sorry, guys, but I've been screaming, "These are drug mules!" for a while.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so they're trekking across the desert, as drug mules do. And they see in the distance drones. You know, Elon Musk always did say that the AI and drones would be the death of everybody.
Oh,
But
dude, why are you putting him over right now?
because it's funny.
That's all the answer. That's all the excuse I need. Let's go.
That's all the excuse I'm gonna give.
Fair enough.
But these drones are carrying mortars, and they're gonna bomb the shit out of the exoframes, hoping to kill the pilots, so that whoever's piloting them can steal the drugs.
Mm-hmm. Of course, that works to a point, but there's survivors. So then we have armed exoframes showing up, clearly from another cartel.
And at this point, the survivors are the guy who was drug running the kids, who is called the Coyote, and a girl and a boy.
Mm-hmm.
And the boy had already given the girl a necklace of Santa Muerte and said, "You take her for her new opportunity in life. I'll hold them off here." It's like, "Are you sure about that, kid?" And he's like, "Yes, go." And he tells her, oh, what was the line? It was, there's always a chance, I guess it just wasn't mine. I think it was the line that they used.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's holding off the rest of these exoframes while Coyote and the girl run off. And they eventually get to the Arizonan border.
But they're not out of the woods yet, because then militia comes in.
You know the militia. The border militia who somehow turned their Toyotas into technicals, even though that's heavily illegal on U.S. land.
They don't care. Bear rights to bear arms. Bears.
Oh, I know.
God damn it.
I don't think it's a bad thing. I just think that it's funny that they somehow got away with it.
Oh, certainly.
The Coyote then tells the girl to run, and that the cocaine can fetch her a good price and she can start a new life. And he uses the same line. "There's always a chance, I guess it wasn't mine."
Although he does try and talk her out of it at first, because of the economic state the U.S. is in.
Yeah. He tries to talk her into becoming a drug runner like him.
Mm-hmm. But it doesn't work, and she ends up crossing the border.
Yep. And he does something fucking baller. He pulls a giant exoframe sized machete from his fucking backpack, charges the militia, flips over one of the trucks and kills the guys in it, which unfortunately breaks his machete, and then gets lit up by the other two.
Mm-hmm.
But it was pretty baller.
Yep.
She eventually survives, makes it near a city, and abandons the exoframe and even the drugs on it to go to the city.
But then we end up shifting over to the Barents Sea in the year 2030.
Yep.
Where we see exoframes being used as jumped up diving suits. Like a modern incarnation of the old big ass brass diving suit from the first half of the 20th century.
Yep, and it's being used for commercial means. He's down there doing underwater welding, which I'm going to add is a hell of a lot safer when you've got such a big insulating thing between you and the welder. I'm sure that life expectancy for an underwater welder went way up when when exoframes started doing it.
Yep.
And one thing I want, before we get to the military aspect of the episode, one thing that was hinted at earlier on in the show, which this episode kind of delves a bit on, is I think it was like in the second episode when they were talking about it initially. They mentioned those who pilot it when they get connected, they sometimes have delusions, and this one we see it in full force.
Well, we'll get there. But yes, there was actually a mention that some people thought that hooking your brain up to exoframes would brainwash you or cause you to hallucinate or somehow take your memories from you or something.
Mm-hmm. But it's hard to take those kind of comments seriously when they're essentially the doubter comments that come around whenever there's some new form of technology.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, haters gonna hate, essentially.
Mm-hmm. If you want to see a modern version of that, go look at the Reformers.
Mm-hmm.
But the Barents is which is adjacent to the Norwegian Sea, and thus is going to be fucking cold because it's the north. There is the whole underwater welding thing that was mentioned earlier, but a big part of it is maintaining surveillance to track submarines. And some of their cables have been getting cut, which is implying Russian sabotage.
Although he says it's probably just trawlers and their trawling nets cutting them.
Mm-hmm.
Which
Happens.
is his co-pilot Freya. Jan is the main pilot. His co-pilot Freya tells him that it could be something else.
And in this case, it actually was something else, a frogman exoframe.
Yep, from Russia.
Mm-hmm.
And so he sort of defends himself from the first onslaught from the frogman, but is scared to do anything now, and he's running out of air.
Mm-hmm.
So he and Freya use the explosives that have been attached to him to act basically as active sonar, and to also disorient the enemy before they rush up to him and, well, weld open his cockpit. At 200 meters underneath the water, that's enough water pressure and cold water to kill you basically instantly.
Mm-hmm.
And then he rises to the top as he's supposed to.
Mm-hmm. But here's where things get weird. Freya was never there.
Yeah, the operators overhear him talking to Freya. I'm like, who the fuck is Freya? And the big boss is like, Freya's his dead wife, basically.
Which, honestly, this episode felt like something you'd see in an episode of The Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Or the Outer Limits that I ended up watching way too much of in high school.
Yep.
But then we get to what we decided to call the biggest troll job in the history of this series.
Oh, wow. This is now for something completely different.
Yeah, this is the what the fuck moment. We
let
skip.
me go with the location first. Now, I should note that up until this point, where there seemed to be this everything culminating in a massive war between North and South.
Yeah, the buildup was, okay, this is going to be a massive conflict and there will be destruction.
But then we shift to the L1 Lagrangian points in the year 2444.
For those of you who don't know what a Lagrangian point is, it is a point of equilibrium between the Earth, Moon, and the Sun that is a gravitational equilibrium. There are 5 of them. One on the perihelion side of Earth, or the point between Earth and the Sun. One on the aphelion side of Earth, or a point away on the outside of Earth from the Sun. And 3 equidistant along the same orbital ecliptic as Earth in a triangle formation. The L1 Lagrangian point is the Lagrangian points, for those of you who might be familiar with hearing that at least a little bit, are the same places where the side colonies in the Gundam universe are generally located.
Mm-hmm. But
do you need me to start this, Monk?
Yeah, let's get this over with.
Okay, let's rip off the Band-Aid. We start with 2 girls in exoframes flying in space, no cockpit. They're colorful, there's lots of pretty lights, and there's lots of laser shooty. We've got things like the power of friendship and the rivalry between 2 girls, and it's all together magical girl mecha anime.
This is magical girl mecha space opera. What the fuck is going on here, anime?
Mm-hmm. This is where I actually have to detract the voice actors most. We could hear throughout the entire series on the English voice track that many of the actors were either voice-over artists or new to voice acting in general. And there is a difference between doing voiceovers and voice acting. And the fucking final attack between the 2 girls, the Stardust Exit Blaster, the scream is just it's not there. It's so phoned in. Yeah. I literally went, after we watched this episode, back to it, changed it to the Japanese voice track, and it was way better.
So, long story short on the voice acting, folks.
Shame.
Yeah. But this entire episode is typical anime. We don't have the obsolete opening that we got from any of the other episodes. We have an eye catch in the middle of the episode, like when people go to commercial breaks. Yeah. And we even get flashbacks to times they're talking to each other in school and how they interacted with each other, and we get the whole inner thoughts thing from every fucking shonen battle anime you've ever seen. It's all there, every trope from every anime you can ever think of. And
they jam-packed the shit out of it in the last 15 minutes of the series.
The one other thing you could tell that was the heart and soul of their mecha love was the fact that there were references to several different Gundams. There were references to Gaigar. There were references to Mazinger. There were references to Getter.
Name a thing.
Name a mecha.
Yeah, name a thing, and it probably was there. At least if it's popular enough.
It's to the point that if you have someone who is and majorly enjoys it, let's just say they need tissues by the end of it.
You had me going, "Hello, is that you?" with literally every reference I could find.
Yeah.
I had to keep up. That's my gig, guys. I had to keep it up. Hello, X, is that you?
Mm-hmm.
And so we get through this entire thing. I'm like, when did this conflict become an anime? And we get to an anime ending prompt, and we actually get a full anime ending and everything. And then it
zooms out to
Bowman and the boys. Bowman and the boys watching a laptop of an exoframe anime with Fernando at the very end going, "Exit Blaster!" because he's way too into it. In fact, one of the comments I appreciated most on the YouTube comment section for this episode was, they got the Marine down life perfectly. That there's nothing to do, a bunch of Marines are around watching a weird anime, and there's always that one weird guy who's way too into it.
Yeah.
Hello, by the way. We are that weird dude.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Episode 12 just...
It's a perfect ending when you really think about it, because the whole series was the effect, the socio-geopolitical effects of throwing something into it and seeing what happens. This last episode was, here's you know, we're going to go full crazy and show you. We're going to show you what happened to pop culture. You know, what
Exaframes
in the 25th century.
Exaframe's effect on modern day entertainment.
Pop culture.
Mm-hmm. And while Maddie says it's the perfect ending, I'm here to tell you that it is the worst blue balls any mecha fan will ever have.
It very much is, and I put a lot of that on the fact that
Udabuchi told his man to do it. You know him.
Now, first off, I will note the script was not done by Urobuchi. It was done by Haganeya
Jin Haganeya.
Yes, which, like I said, Urobuchi told his man to do it because they're both Nitro Plus. So,
yeah.
But the unfortunate part is that this is the final. Again, this was another victim of that whole one season only thing that the YouTube originals suffered from, because it's very clear that they were setting things up for a follow up where the rubber band tension would finally snap.
Yeah, because we had already seen it starting to snap in the Ecuadorian Peru conflict episodes.
And if a season 2 had happened, they probably would have explored that.
Would have been good, and maybe their actors would have gotten a little more natural.
Yeah, and so speaking of, unfortunately, that isn't what happened, and I doubt Gen Urobuchi is going to be working with YouTube anytime soon.
You never know. Urobuchi's a kind of an auteur that way, so he might.
He might if he can find a way to fuck with them. Just say, I'll work with you, but I want Yoko Taro as my co-writer.
Hell yeah!
You know what?
Yeah.
The question there is, will Square Enix let Yoko Taro go do that? No, we have him chained in the basement writing the only games that keep us afloat other than Final Fantasy. You can't have him. Well, stop making stupid decisions like NFTs! And you might earn money. Oh, that's right. Side note, Square Enix did double down on NFTs recently in their newest sales report. Fuck them.
That's gonna be. Let's see how long that lasts, especially when FF16 comes around and makes them a shitload of money.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. We'll see how it plays out.
I guess I get the feeling you're gonna see a civil war in a few years. Just saying. But I think it's time we render our final judgments on Obsolete.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of this particular deliberation, and thus I turn to our good brothers. Brother Flutter, since you just came back, you're first up. Obsolete, be it weeb or be it scrub.
It'd be very much weeb, although it does caution. You can err on the caution of it possibly being scrub if you are not that big into mecha.
All right.
This is most definitely not for everyone. Is what I'm trying to say.
Okay. Well, and with that, we have a vote of weeb from Brother Flutter. Brother Matty, what do you got for me?
Oh, there's the CG animation in this stutters. The English voice acting goes from acting to voice over acting to acting. And especially in the final episode, you could tell that the assignment was not heard, or the budget was not there to make said assignment. That being said, this is 12 to 15 minute episodes, and a story that is, by and large, easy to understand and follow. And the troll job of troll jobs that has had every one of us on the floor laughing. I can't help but give this a weeb. It gets a weeb, barely, but it gets it.
All right. Brother Matty has rendered his judgment of weeb, and with that we have 2 votes of weeb. Brother Rick, what do you got for us?
It's not for this one. Like, as Brother Matty has said, it stutters with the animation. Like, when it comes to the action sequences, it is great. It is clean for the most part, but it's during those slow segments that it can stutter. This voice acting, you've heard all the analogies. I think so. I want to say much on that. And then, yeah, we all but it's if you have someone who is a big fan of mech stuff, just sit back and literally you can just sit back, grab a thing of popcorn, and laugh at them as they react to that episode. But even then, that's still it's disheartening because it does feel like it needed a second season, though it's unfortunately never going to happen. Add another to the list of shows that are good. We'll never get a second season to clear up plot points. But regardless, I'm gonna say my final verdict is weeb with a slight caution on Scrub in terms of whether you're going to enjoy them or not. Because if you're not a big fan of mecha anime or military anime, you're not going to really enjoy it.
All right. And for Brother Rick, we've got our third weeb. Monk, it's on you.
Okay. I've already mentioned the CG thing. When it comes to the voice acting, I'm 50-50 about whether or not the issue with the voice acting is direction or if it's an issue of rookie voice actors.
Inexperience. Yeah.
I think it's a little of column A and a little of column B. That
6 of one, half dozen of the other.
Yeah. That being said, the greatest strength that Obsolete has is being a classic case of high concept science fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Introducing a concept and then introducing the consequences of that concept. In other words, the setting is pulling a lot of the weight compared to characterization or anything like that, because and some of that is due to the fact that we have such short run times. We probably would have a better understanding of the Exoframe Marine unit if we had full 24-minute episodes, but that's not the case. And because of that, the setting has to take more precedent. This has far more in common with a Tom Clancy novel. That being said, it does kind of suffer a little bit in the tail end because it focuses on some self-contained stories when, with the amount of restrictions that it has, it really can't afford to. One of the key examples for me in this is Santa Muerte. As nice of a story as that was, there's not a whole lot in that fits in with the rest of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And this is an issue that crops that it's basically a case of much like what I said years ago with Power Rangers Hyperforce. It's an issue of not utilizing your time properly. That being said, I do think this is a triumph of mecha in CG animation. It certainly is better than some other takes I've seen. Looking at you, Genlock Season 2. And if nothing else, it's another case of showing that Gen Urobuchi is not as much of a butcher as he used to be.
He doesn't need to be. He doesn't need the shock value.
I honestly feel like working on Guy mellowed him out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, Guy certainly had a high body count.
But not nearly as high as, say, Madoka.
Mm-hmm. And even the stuff he's been doing with Peely, like Thunderbolt Fantasy, doesn't have as high a body count as you would think from him.
Which is funny because I would expect with Shen to already have high body counts.
It has high backstabbing instead because, well, I would not trust anything Gale says. In fact, I think one of the other characters had said if you were to gather everybody Gale has screwed over together, you could have a parade. But getting back on the rails, I would like to see this studio or another one like it to have another crack at this kind of concept, because it is something I would like to see explored.
That would be nice, yeah.
I know JT Vega had said that it has a manga. I haven't seen the manga. I can't confirm or deny that. But for me, as much as I want to give it scrub for its shortcomings, it's very easy for me to say weeb, but don't watch the dub.
Yes.
Yeah, this is sub only.
Yeah, this is better to watch in the sub, considering the fact that the voice cast are much more experienced in comparison.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and with the monk, we have 4 votes of weeb, which means it comes to me. So, I won't harp on about the things that have been harped on. They've been talked about ad nauseum. You all get the point. I will instead harp on the things that have not yet been harped on, such as the fact that the only audio identity we have is the opening theme. There is no audio identity here otherwise. And that is a vast failing. There is much that could have been done with music to support storytelling within this show. I will also say that the self-contained stories, such as Santa Muerte and Freya, and even the final episode, could have been contained within other episodes as nods and glances to the other particular consequences of introducing exoframes to society, but that we were still primarily telling a war story. You do them as nods and glances. You don't do them as full episodes. That's just going to cause your pacing to fall apart. A perfect example is in episode 4 with Loener. We saw the consequences as Loener in a military environment is talking with a civilian about the consequences. That was the nod. That's all we really needed to understand how widespread things have become. And that's even just, 3 years after the aliens show up. On top of that, when it comes to the dub, I actually, unbeknownst to these guys, went back and watched through the entire series in Japanese. And it is night and day. I would even say midnight sun versus the darkest abysses of any cave you've ever been in.
Damn.
Definitely watch the Japanese dub if you're going to watch this. It is that big of a difference. It will markedly improve your impression of the show. Unfortunately, that's a second impression for me, not a first. And you know what they say, first impressions are lasting.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, this is going to be a stress on those 3 ending episodes of the 3 independent stories. All of them are cool ideas that could have been explored as side series and should have been explored as side series, especially the one with Freya and the whole somehow he's seeing and hearing his lover because he's in the exoframe. That one would have been probably super interesting to follow. But because they destroy all of the pacing for the buildup that we've had with everything else, it leaves you feeling stolen from. It leaves you feeling cheated. I legitimately felt cheated at the end of our second session. And with that, I rate it scrub.
Fair play. Fair play.
Mm-hmm.
Fair played. This is a rare case. This is a rare case where the streak is where not unanimous.
It took me up until literally this discussion to come to whether it was going to be weeb or scrub for me, Monk. And as we went through the episodes, I was able to crystallize what I had been feeling in the moment at that time. And that is why it gets scrub, because after having the time to settle everything and crystallize all my thoughts about it, I am left feeling lacking. I am left feeling cheated. I am left feeling that I did not get what I was told I would get. So with 4 votes of weeb and my 1 dissenting vote of scrub, obsolete is weeb. 4 out of 5 Parliament members agree that obsolete is weeb.
Barely, though.
Yeah, this is a weeb in the same way that my Vikings get wins.
Yep.
Still won the division though, so I can hold that over Green Bay's head during the off season, and I will hold that over Green Bay's head because little brother has to get their one on Big Brother.
Yes.
Plus, it means I get to enjoy Tom Grossi in pain. But with that said, even with all the remarks that we've done,
scrub is bad, weeb is good. If it is weeb, it is good anime. Or good media in general.
Mm-hmm.
If it is scrub, it is bad.
Yeah. But we are now at the point where it's time to decide what the fuck are we gonna do next.
And thus, Wheel of Morality, turn, turn, turn. Tell us the lesson that we should learn.
And that wheel!
Alright, let's see what we got.
No whammies, no whammies, no whammies, no whammies, no whammies.
Kaiba!
Alright.
That is what we're going with next. So expect shit to get weird because Kaiba is coming to us from the same guy who gave us Mind Game.
Masaki.
Oh, hell yeah.
Masaki, what is sanity, Yuasa?
Just so you guys know, here is the 1-line summary from Wikipedia. Its story revolves around an enigmatic character named Warp and takes place in a psychedelic world mixed with a space opera universe where the change of body, the traffic of memories, are possible.
Well, we're going to be in for a good time.
Yep.
Yep.
At the very least, one can say this: we are not going to be in for a boring visual experience.
No.
Especially
since Madhouse is animating.
Ooh.
Hey, look at that! A series that Madhouse was able to finish.
Right?
Among others, yes.
It's on a lot of things.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I just have to make the joke.
Oh,
But-
there's nothing wrong with that.
But like I said, Kaiba is what's coming next. That will probably not be in the next few weeks. And we'll see who ends up with their pants on at the end of it. And of course, on my end, I will have my own fair share of insanity. As mentioned before, this Wednesday, Zan and I will be doing a discussion regarding the announcement of Armored Core 6 and what we'd like to see out of an Armored Core entry. And probably talk about some of the mistakes of the past Armored Core entries, looking straight at you, Nexus. But that is a story for another night. So until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.